Jeff Bezos was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in 1964 to a teenage mother who was barely old enough to vote. His biological father was absent almost immediately, disappearing from Jeff's life before he could form a single memory of him. And so, from the beginning, Jeff's world didn't start with stability. It started with uncertainty, with a young mother struggling to understand her future while holding a newborn child in her arms. Her name was Jackie, a girl who suddenly had to become a woman who suddenly had to become a mother. And like many young mothers, she had no idea how she would manage the weight that life had just handed her. But she did what determined people do. She figured it out, one choice at a time, one sacrifice at a time, one long day at a time. Jeff's earliest years were shaped by that determination. He watched his mother fight for survival, for education, for a stable home. He watched her work through exhaustion, rarely complaining, always pushing forward. Those early years planted a seed in Jeff, a belief that effort is the foundation of progress. That even when life feels impossible, there is always a way forward if you are willing to work harder than the chaos around you. When Jeff was 4 years old, everything changed again. His mother remarried. And the man she married, Miguel Bezos, a Cuban immigrant who had arrived in America with almost nothing, would become the father Jeff truly knew. Miguel adopted Jeff, gave him his last name, and brought into Jeff's world an entirely new model of resilience. Miguel had fled Cuba alone as a teenager with no plan and no safety net. He built his life from zero. He worked, studied, and fought for every opportunity. For a young Jeff, that was powerful. It wasn't a story he read in a book. It wasn't a lesson a teacher told him at school. It was real. It lived in his home. Hard work wasn't a motivational line. It was the way life worked. And slowly, Jeff absorbed that mindset like a sponge. But Jeff wasn't just hardworking. He was curious, relentlessly curious. Even as a child, he was the boy who wanted to understand how everything worked. Not just what something did, but why it did it. Why it behaved the way it behaved. Why it broke the way it broke. He would take apart radios, toys, mechanical gadgets, anything he could get his hands on. And yes, sometimes he broke things beyond repair, but that didn't matter to him. Because the goal wasn't to keep things working. The goal was to learn. His mother often joked that she couldn't leave Jeff alone for 2 minutes without coming back to find screws, wires, and dismantled parts scattered across the floor. But she never stopped him. She let him explore, let him test, let him fail. That freedom was important. It taught Jeff that failure wasn't something to fear. Failure was simply part of understanding the world. And that belief, failure is information, would one day become a core philosophy at Amazon. But long before that, Jeff was still just a kid trying to navigate childhood. He was quiet, observant, more interested in ideas than in playground drama. He wasn't the loud child in the room. He was the child thinking 3 steps ahead, quietly plotting how to build something that shouldn't even exist yet. One of the first major influences in Jeff's life was his grandfather, Lawrence Preston Gies, a strong, capable man who worked at the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, a man who lived by his hands, his mind, and his principles. Every summer, Jeff spent time on his grandfather's ranch in Texas. It was the opposite of city life. It was rugged, demanding, full of real work, fixing windmills, repairing broken pipes, castrating cattle, solving problems the moment they appeared. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy, but it built him. Jeff would later say that his grandfather taught him one of the most important lessons of his life. You can figure almost anything out if you're willing to try. Those summers hardened him, strengthened him, molded him. They introduced him to a world where excuses didn't matter, only solutions did. If a tool broke, you fixed it. If a fence collapsed, you rebuilt it. If something wasn't working, you didn't complain, you solved it. This mindset, this belief that there is always a way, would one day become the backbone of his business philosophy. But Jeff wasn't just a ranch kid. He was also a dreamer, a thinker, a child fascinated by science and the stars. In school, he excelled. Teachers saw him as unusually focused, unusually determined. He wasn't just smart, he was disciplined. He knew how to think in systems, in patterns, in long-term strategies. By the time he was a teenager, he was already talking about space exploration, satellites, and the future of humanity. He wasn't dreaming small. He was dreaming impossibly big. At home, he turned the garage into a small laboratory. He built gadgets. He experimented. He created small inventions that sometimes made sense and sometimes didn't, but the point wasn't perfection. The point was exploration. In high school, he started his first business, an educational camp for younger students. He taught them science, technology, and problem-solving. It wasn't a huge business. It didn't make him rich. But it gave him something far more valuable, his first taste of entrepreneurship. He learned how to organize people, how to manage a small team, how to create something from nothing, how to take an idea and turn it into reality. By the time he graduated, Jeff Bezos wasn't just another smart student. He was a young man shaped by adversity, strengthened by work ethic, driven by curiosity, and encouraged by two parents who had sacrificed everything to give him a chance. But life was just getting started. Jeff went to Princeton, not because he wanted prestige, but because he wanted challenge. At Princeton, he dove deep into electrical engineering and computer science. He surrounded himself with the brightest minds, competed with students who were all at the top of their class, and pushed himself harder than ever before. It wasn't easy. At times, it felt overwhelming, but Jeff didn't break. Instead, he grew sharper, more disciplined, more obsessed with understanding how the world worked and how technology could transform it. He graduated with honors. He left Princeton as a young man with options, real options. And that's where the next chapter of his life began. A chapter filled with ambition, filled with pressure, filled with decisions that would change everything. But even then, in those early years, Jeff carried something with him. The memory of a mother who refused to give up. The sacrifice of a father who rebuilt his life from nothing. The wisdom of a grandfather who taught him to solve problems with his own hands. And the belief that the future is something you build, not something you wait for. This was the foundation, the roots, the beginning of a journey that would shake the world. And yet, he still had no idea just how far it would take him. There is a moment in every ambitious life when the world stops feeling like a playground and starts feeling like a battlefield. For Jeff Bezos, that moment began the day he stepped out of Princeton. He was young. He was brilliant. He had every reason to believe the road ahead would be smooth, but the truth was far from that. The world didn't care about his dreams. The world didn't care about his potential. The world demanded proof. And proof in those early years came with pain, pressure, and a growing awareness that success was not guaranteed, even for someone who worked as hard as Jeff. He entered the finance world because that's where the smartest minds were going. He wanted challenge. He wanted competition. He wanted to test himself against people who had built their lives around logic, numbers, and high-stakes decisions. His first real struggle was simple. He didn't fit in, not immediately. Not naturally. Jeff thought in long time frames. Everyone around him thought in quarters. Jeff wanted to build things. His industry wanted to optimize things. He was different, and in those early years, different didn't feel like a superpower. It felt like a burden. At Fiddle, his first job, he worked long hours trying to build an international trading network. It was ambitious. It was complex. It was exactly the kind of challenge he loved, but the work was exhausting. The pressure was suffocating, and the politics of corporate life quickly revealed themselves. Jeff learned something painful but critical. Hard work doesn't always lead to progress. Sometimes hard work only leads to exhaustion. He switched jobs, looking for a place where his mind would feel alive. He joined Bankers Trust. He moved on to D.E. Shaw, one of the most elite hedge funds in the world. From the outside, his career looked flawless, a meteoric rise through the financial ranks. But inside, he was struggling with a truth he couldn't ignore. He wasn't meant to follow someone else's path. He was meant to build his own. Yet building your own path comes with a price. And for Jeff, that price began with restlessness, a deep, persistent discomfort with the idea of spending his life optimizing spreadsheets instead of changing the world. He wanted more. But wanting more is not the same as knowing how to achieve it. For years, Jeff lived in a quiet frustration. He was successful but unfulfilled, respected but not inspired, well-paid but empty. It was a strange kind of suffering, the suffering of a man who knows he is capable of more than what life is offering him. And then came the biggest struggle of all, the fear of walking away. Jeff was earning a huge salary. He had prestige. He had stability. He had a predictable future that most people would envy. But he also had a dream, small, fragile, impossible, an idea about the internet, an idea about online commerce, an idea about something that didn't exist yet, something no one could clearly visualize. The idea scared him, not because it might fail, but because it might succeed, and he might never forgive himself for not trying. He spent nights walking in circles around his apartment, imagining the two versions of his life, one where he stayed safe, one where he leaped into uncertainty. Both versions terrified him. He talked to mentors, he talked to friends. And the answers he got were predictable. Why risk everything? You're already successful. The internet is a fad. No one will buy things online. And the worst one, the one that cut the deepest, you're not Steve Jobs. You're not a visionary, you're a finance guy. Jeff listened, but he didn't agree, not fully, not in his heart. He knew he wasn't a visionary yet. Vision doesn't come from talent, it comes from courage. And courage grows only in the soil of struggle. Still, he hesitated. Still, he doubted. Still, he feared what failure would mean not just for himself, but for his wife, his future family, his stability. Behind the polished resume, behind the professional success, he carried a storm of uncertainty that nearly broke him. But the struggle wasn't just emotional. It was practical. He wasn't rich. He didn't have investors. He didn't have a blueprint for building a company that had never existed before. He had an idea and a belief that the internet would grow at 2,300% per year. But belief doesn't pay rent. Belief doesn't protect you from humiliation. Belief doesn't guarantee that the people you hire will trust your vision. Jeff knew this. He knew he was swimming against the current of an industry that didn't understand him. Every day he stayed at D.E. Shaw, he felt the walls closing in, like he was locking himself into a life that didn't belong to him. Every day he didn't start his idea, he felt guilt, heavy, sharp, relentless. He was struggling with the single greatest enemy of potential, comfort, because comfort doesn't feel like the enemy. It feels warm, it feels predictable, it feels safe. But comfort kills dreams quietly, the same way rust destroys steel. And Jeff Bezos was rusting. He was good at his job, too good. Good enough to stay forever and never discover who he truly was. This was the early struggle, not the struggle of money or opportunity, but the struggle of identity. He wasn't battling the world, he was battling himself. And that fight, the internal war between who he was and who he could become, would shape the rest of his life. But the storm was just beginning. This was only the first chapter of his struggle. The real pain, the real losses, the real tests of character, those were still waiting for him. Beyond the corporate walls, beyond the safe choices, beyond the life he was supposed to live. Because the moment he stepped toward his dream, the world would push back harder than he ever imagined. The struggle intensified the moment Jeff Bezos decided to leave the comfort of certainty. But before he could quit, he had to speak to one person whose opinion mattered more than anyone else's, David Shaw, the founder of D.E. Shaw, the man who had recruited him, mentored him, and trusted him. Jeff walked into his office with a heart full of fear and a mind full of conviction. He explained his idea, an online bookstore, a business built entirely on the internet, something that had never been done before at scale. Something that sounded absurd in the 1990s. Shaw listened calmly. He respected Jeff. He believed Jeff was valuable, too valuable to lose. So he said the sentence Jeff would never forget. That sounds like a great idea for someone who doesn't already have a good job. It was logical, it was rational, it was safe, but it was not the life Jeff wanted. Still, those words shook him. Even inspired people doubt themselves when intelligent voices reject their dreams. Jeff walked out of the office carrying a decision heavier than anything he had ever faced. Should he leave a guaranteed future for a dream built on numbers and a feeling? That night back home, he talked to his wife, Mac Kenzie, and instead of caution, instead of fear, she said something remarkable. You should do it. You can always go back to a job, but you can't always chase a dream. Her courage strengthened him, her belief steadied him, but even with that support, the fear remained, because now the struggle shifted. Now the question was, should I? It became, can I survive what's coming? Jeff knew the road would be brutal. He knew he would face criticism, confusion, and financial risk. He knew that failure would not just be personal, it would be public. Entrepreneurship is not romantic at the beginning. It is terrifying. It is isolating. It is unpredictable. And the moment Jeff left his high-paying job, he stepped directly into all three. He packed his bags. He left Wall Street. He drove across the country in a beat-up car with his wife, stopping at gas stations to write business plans and map out strategies. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't iconic. He wasn't even confident. He was just a man with a dream in his head and a storm in his heart. The journey tested him immediately. He calculated costs on scraps of paper. He worked through nights. He doubted himself countless times. He had to convince investors, but investors didn't understand the internet. They didn't believe people would type credit card numbers into a computer. They didn't believe books could be sold online. They didn't believe a startup could compete with giants like Barnes and Noble. Some laughed. Some dismissed him. Some warned him he was about to ruin his life. The rejection wasn't just discouraging, it was humiliating. Imagine walking into a room, heart racing, ready to present your dream, and being met with blank stares. Imagine explaining the future to people who only understand the past. Imagine believing in something so strongly, while the whole room silently doubts your sanity. Jeff swallowed that pain again and again. What made it worse was that he needed money, not to become rich, simply to survive, to pay rent, to run the website, to buy inventory, to keep the dream alive. He approached 60 potential investors, almost all said no, and every no chipped away at his confidence. Every no made him wonder if David Shaw had been right. Every no felt like confirmation that the dream was too ambitious, too early, too strange. But ambition is not about timing. It's about willingness to endure the period when everyone thinks you're wrong. And Jeff endured. He kept pitching. He kept learning. He kept refining his idea. Finally, after endless rejection, he managed to raise a small amount, not much, not enough to feel secure, just enough to begin. But beginning meant another struggle. Proving the idea worked. His office was a garage. His first desk was made of wooden doors laid across metal frames. His team was small. His resources were smaller. But his expectations for himself were enormous. And that is its own kind of suffering. Because when your standards exceed your resources, the gap between who you are and who you need to be feels impossible. Jeff spent nights sleeping in the office. Days coding, packaging books, answering emails, fixing bugs, weekends planning strategies that might collapse overnight. He was CEO, he was marketing director, he was customer service, he was operations manager. He was a man trying to build a skyscraper with a teaspoon. He tried to stay strong, but the pressure grew. Every order felt like a victory, every refund felt like a failure, every bug felt like a personal attack. And beneath it all was a deep, constant fear. What if this doesn't work? What if I walked away from everything for nothing? What if everyone who doubted me was right? These questions haunted him. But the greatest struggle wasn't the technical challenges. It wasn't the financial instability. It wasn't even the fear of failure. It was the loneliness of vision. The feeling of being the only person in the room who can see a future that doesn't exist yet. That loneliness is heavy. It isolates, it consumes, it makes you doubt your sanity, but Jeff carried it. Day after day, failure after failure, setback after setback. He didn't know if Amazon would survive. He didn't know if customers would trust it. He didn't know if the internet would grow fast enough. All he knew was this: if he didn't try with everything he had, he would regret it for the rest of his life. And so he pushed forward, through fear, through exhaustion, through rejection, through struggle after struggle, not because he was fearless, but because he was determined. The dream was fragile, but the man chasing it was not. Yet even he could not predict the darkness that was coming next, the period when everything he'd built would nearly collapse. The struggle was only the beginning. The darkest moments were waiting. The struggles sharpened as Amazon took its first shaky steps into the world. The dream was alive, yes, but barely. Every day felt like walking on cracking ice, never knowing when the next step would break the surface. In the beginning, Amazon was nothing more than a fragile idea powered by long nights, borrowed desks, and a team that believed because Jeff believed. But belief doesn't eliminate struggle. Belief does not pay bills. Belief does not guarantee survival. As the company grew from a garage startup into a small online bookstore, Jeff discovered a truth that haunts every founder. Success creates bigger problems. More customers meant more orders meant more mistakes meant more pressure. The tiny team couldn't keep up. Emails went unanswered, orders shipped late. Systems crashed without warning. The website went down so often that customers began to expect it. Every glitch felt like doom. Every failure felt like evidence that the critics were right. Jeff was drowning in responsibility he could barely manage, but he refused to break. He pushed harder. He demanded more from himself. He demanded more from his team. Many admired his intensity. Others feared it. Some couldn't handle it at all. They quit, worn out by the pace, the pressure, the endless rush to fix problems faster than they appeared. Jeff took each resignation personally. He questioned himself. He wondered if he was asking too much. But then he reminded himself, if you are trying to do something the world has never seen before, you cannot act like the world. Still, the emotional toll grew heavier. There were nights when he couldn't sleep, nights when he replayed every mistake, nights when he felt he was steering a ship through a storm without a compass. Money was tight, servers were failing, warehouses were chaotic, and the competition was waking up. Barnes and Noble, the giant of the book industry, dismissed Amazon at first. But as Amazon grew, their tone changed. Soon, Jeff found himself facing a billion-dollar corporation with an army of lawyers, executives, and resources that dwarfed his own. Barnes and Noble announced their own online bookstore and declared publicly, "We will crush Amazon." Those words cut deep because they weren't wrong. Amazon was small, weak, underfunded, barely surviving month to month. Jeff felt fear, real fear, the kind that makes your stomach twist, the kind that keeps your mind awake even when your body is collapsing. Would Amazon survive the attack? Could they outmaneuver a giant? Could they innovate fast enough? Could they even afford to fight? The struggle was no longer about doubters or rejection. It had become a battle for survival. While competitors had entire departments, Amazon had Jeff pacing the floors at 2 a.m. Mapping out ideas, crafting strategies, refusing to let panic cloud his vision. He made decisions that terrified his team. He pushed Amazon to expand into music, then movies, then electronics long before they were ready. Some investors called him reckless. Some employees whispered that he was dreaming too far ahead. But the truth was simple. Jeff wasn't expanding to dominate. He was expanding to survive, because if Amazon stayed small, it would be crushed. If it didn't innovate, it would die. If it didn't grow fast enough, it would disappear. This meant more pressure, more financial strain, more sleepless nights. Jeff often went home so late that he barely saw daylight. He missed family moments. He sacrificed weekends. He sacrificed peace of mind. He sacrificed comfort, the thing he once feared because he finally understood something. Comfort was never the goal. Impact was, but struggle has a way of multiplying. Just when one fire is contained, another erupts. As Amazon grew, so did the complexities: warehousing problems, shipping disasters, software malfunctions, and growing customer expectations. Customers loved Amazon. But their love was demanding. They wanted faster service, more selection, lower prices. Jeff wanted to give them everything. And that desire became both his greatest strength and his greatest burden. Every day he woke up asking, "How can we make this better?" But every answer required money they didn't have, time they couldn't spare, people they hadn't yet hired. And then came the emotional struggle, the one no one else could see. Behind the firm voice, the confident speeches, the relentless energy, Jeff was exhausted, deeply exhausted. He worried about payroll. He worried about investors. He worried about customer trust. He worried the entire company could collapse with one wrong decision. There were moments when he felt alone, even surrounded by his team. Moments when he stared at the ceiling at night, wondering if he was pushing too hard, risking too much, dreaming too big. Moments when the weight of responsibility threatened to break him. But with each struggle, something inside him hardened. Something grew stronger. Something grew sharper. He didn't know it yet, but these struggles were shaping the leader he needed to become, a leader capable of surviving storms far darker than anything he had faced so far. Because the darkest moments, the moments that would nearly destroy him, the moments that would force him to decide whether Amazon lived or died, were approaching fast. The struggle had been intense, but the darkness was still ahead. There comes a point in every great story when the world stops testing you gently and begins testing you brutally. For Jeff Bezos, that moment arrived when Amazon was no longer a curiosity, no longer a small garage experiment, no longer a minor player in a world ruled by giants. It was now a threat, and the world responds to threats with force. Amazon was growing, yes, but growth comes with chaos, and chaos comes with consequences. The first cracks appeared quietly. Inventory systems that worked when the company was small began collapsing under the weight of new orders. Warehouses turned into war zones of lost packages, mislabeled items, and exhausted employees running on caffeine and desperation. Jeff walked into Amazon's distribution centers and felt his stomach tighten. Boxes everywhere, errors everywhere, confusion everywhere. This wasn't innovation. This was barely survival. And then the worst happened: Christmas. The season that could make or break a young company. Amazon was drowning in orders, thousands more than they had ever seen before. Customers trusted them. Customers were excited. Customers expected magic. But behind the scenes, Amazon was falling apart. Packages piled up in corners like abandoned hopes. Printers jammed. Servers crashed. Employees cried from stress. Managers begged for solutions that didn't exist. Jeff walked the warehouse floors at 3 a.m., trying to help wherever he could, taping boxes, moving pallets, comforting workers who felt they were failing. But he couldn't shake the truth. Amazon wasn't ready. And when the company missed deliveries, when customers didn't receive gifts in time for the holidays, Jeff felt something break inside him. Not anger, not frustration, but fear. Fear that Amazon's reputation was dying before it had even lived. Fear that customers would never trust them again. Fear that the dream he sacrificed everything for was slipping through his fingers. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. He wanted to stop time long enough to fix everything. But time didn't stop. The problems didn't pause, and behind the operational disaster came an even darker storm. The dot-com bubble. The world had fallen in love with the internet. Investors were throwing money at anything with a "com" in its name. Stock prices soared. Companies with no revenue were valued in the billions. It was madness, and Jeff knew madness never lasts. He prepared for impact, but he wasn't prepared for how devastating it would be. When the bubble burst, the destruction was immediate and merciless. Internet companies collapsed overnight. Investors panicked. Confidence evaporated. Amazon's stock price, once a symbol of its promise, plummeted by more than 90%. People began whispering, "Amazon is done. Bezos is finished. They'll never recover." It was all hype. Financial analysts mocked them on television. Articles predicted bankruptcy. Former supporters backed away. And the hardest part, many of Jeff's own employees secretly feared the same thing. They walked into work wondering if Amazon would still exist in 6 months. They watched the stock price crash on office monitors, feeling the dread tighten in their chests. And Jeff carried all of it. He stood in front of his team, forcing confidence into his voice even as the numbers screamed disaster. He reassured them. He encouraged them. He told them Amazon would survive. But alone, in the quiet moments he never let anyone see, he wondered if he was lying. This was not normal stress. This was existential pressure, the kind that breaks companies and breaks leaders. At home, he hid the worst of it from his family. He didn't want them to see the fear in his eyes. He didn't want them to feel the weight crushing his shoulders. But Mackenzie knew. She always knew. She saw the long nights, the silent dinners, the restless sleep, the way he stared into the distance as if fighting. Jeff read headlines that declared him a failure. He saw cartoons mocking him. He watched experts smugly explain why Amazon could never make money. It hurt. It cut deeper than he expected. But the pain wasn't just emotional, it was suffocating. Because every morning he had to walk into the office, stand tall, and lead his team with strength he didn't feel. He had to be the lighthouse while the storm tried to drown him. He had to pretend he wasn't drowning. But the truth, Jeff Bezos was standing on the edge of collapse, financially, emotionally, and mentally. And the darkest moments, the moments that would nearly break him, the moments that would decide Amazon's fate, were still ahead. When the world turns against you, it rarely does so quietly. For Jeff Bezos, the darkness didn't come as a single blow. It came as a series of relentless hits, each one cutting deeper than the last. As Amazon's stock collapsed and the dot-com bubble burst, the narrative shifted from skepticism to mockery to open hostility. Analysts who once praised Jeff now dismissed him as delusional. Business magazines labeled Amazon a guaranteed failure. Newspapers wrote headlines like, "Amazon Bomb," and late-night TV hosts joked about how quickly the online book guy would disappear. Jeff tried to ignore it. He tried to stay focused. But no one is immune to constant ridicule. It got under his skin. It dug into his confidence. It made him question whether his vision was truly the future or a very expensive mistake. But the external criticism wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching people he admired lose faith in him. Some board members began whispering about more experienced leadership. A few investors argued that Jeff was too risky, too ambitious, too impossible to control. Behind closed doors, discussions grew darker. Should Bezos step aside? Should we bring in a real CEO? Has he taken the company past the point of no return? And though none of these conversations were said to Jeff directly, he felt them. He sensed the doubt. He sensed the impatience. He sensed the unspoken fear that Amazon's greatest risk was not the market, but Jeff himself. The pressure became suffocating, but the financial nightmare was even worse. Amazon had to lay off thousands of employees. This was the moment Jeff feared most. Not bankruptcy, not public humiliation, not investor anger, but the human cost. Jeff walked through the offices the night before the layoffs, staring at the empty desks, the quiet hallways, the photos pinned to cubicle walls. Behind every desk was a life, a family, a dream, a person who had believed in him and was about to pay the price for the company's struggle. The guilt hit him harder than any financial loss. He said later that laying off people was the hardest decision of his entire life. He didn't sleep the night before the announcement. He barely slept the night after. Because when you're the founder, every failure feels personal. Every setback feels like your fault. Every life affected weighs on your conscience. Jeff felt that weight crushing him, but the darkness still wasn't done with him. Warehouses reached breaking points. Systems collapsed repeatedly. Returns skyrocketed. Customer complaints flooded in. Amazon's promise, fast, reliable delivery was beginning to look like a lie, and nothing wounded Jeff more than disappointing customers, because customers were the core of his purpose. Without them, nothing mattered. He crawled inside the data looking for answers, but the problems multiplied faster than the solutions. Warehouse employees burned out. Morale plummeted. Some quit, some cried. Some yelled at managers who themselves were struggling not to fall apart. Jeff visited the facilities, and employees looked at him with a painful mix of hope and exhaustion, as if waiting for a miracle only he could deliver. But he wasn't a miracle worker. He was a man running out of time, energy, and luck. Still, he refused to quit. But refusing to quit is not the same as winning. And the darkest moment of all, the moment that nearly broke him beyond repair, came when Amazon's cash reserves fell so low that bankruptcy became a real, looming threat. Not years away, not theoretical, months away, maybe weeks. The math was terrifying. If Amazon couldn't raise more money fast, the entire company would die. Jeff stayed late in the office, staring at projections, spreadsheets, charts that no longer made sense. Everything pointed toward collapse. One night, alone in the dim glow of his office light, he felt something he rarely allowed: hopelessness. He wondered if he had misread the future, if he had forced a dream onto a world that wasn't ready. If he had gambled not only his own life, but the lives of thousands of employees. He wondered if this was how his story ended: a brilliant idea crushed by timing, competition, and his own ambition. He stood by the window, looking out at the dark Seattle skyline, and whispered to himself, maybe I can't save it." He hated himself for thinking it. He hated the weakness in the thought. He hated the fear in his own voice. But entrepreneurs are human. Even visionaries break. Even the strongest leaders crack under pressure. And Jeff Bezos was breaking. The stress affected his sleep, his diet, his emotions. He became shorter with people, more intense, more relentless. Some employees admired his fire. Others feared it. But they didn't see the truth behind it. He was fighting for survival, for Amazon's survival, for his team's survival, for his life's purpose. And failure no longer felt like an option. Failure felt like death, yet the pressure only increased. Competitors slashed prices to kill Amazon. Publishers demanded better terms. Shipping costs exploded. Investors panicked. Analysts predicted Amazon's collapse almost daily. Jeff was surrounded by doubt, drowning in debt, and running out of time. He was fighting against an entire world that wanted him to disappear. But the darkest moment, the moment that would push him to the edge, the moment that would define what came next, was still approaching. A single decision, a line drawn in the sand, would determine whether Amazon lived or died. And Jeff Bezos would have to make that decision in total darkness, with the world expecting him to fail. The darkest storms often arrive quietly and then strike all at once. For Jeff Bezos, that strike came during a private meeting with Amazon's leadership team, a meeting that would later be remembered as one of the most critical turning points in the company's history. The numbers on the table were brutal. Operating costs were out of control. Shipping expenses were bleeding the company dry. Warehouses were failing under pressure, and investors had lost patience. One executive said bluntly, "If we don't change everything fast, we won't survive the year." The room fell silent. For a long moment, Jeff said nothing, not because he was calm, but because he was absorbing the gravity of the crisis. Inside him, something twisted: fear, frustration, guilt, and determination clashing all at once. He felt responsible for the chaos, responsible for the stress, responsible for the possibility that thousands of families might soon wake up without jobs. This was no longer about innovation. This was about survival, and survival requires brutal decisions. The hard reset Jeff made a choice that stunned the room. He ordered Amazon to undertake a radical internal transformation, a complete reinvention from the inside out. New systems, new processes, new leadership structure, new expectations, new culture, everything would be rebuilt. It was the corporate equivalent of surgery without anesthesia. People resisted. Managers pushed back. Some argued it was too extreme, too fast, too risky, but Jeff didn't budge. Because he knew the truth, incremental change cannot save a dying company. Only revolution can, but revolutions are painful. And this one nearly broke him. Long hours became longer, challenges multiplied instead of disappearing. Employees grew frustrated, some burned out, some quit in anger, blaming him for the chaos. Jeff took the hits, every one of them. Because leadership in darkness isn't about popularity, it's about responsibility. He walked the warehouse floors at midnight, sweating alongside exhausted workers, apologizing when systems failed, pushing teams, pushing himself, demanding more because the alternative was death. But even with all that effort, the crisis intensified. The cash crisis then came the moment that truly pushed Jeff to the edge. Amazon's cash reserves reached a critical low. They weren't just short on money, they were weeks away from running out completely. Payroll was at risk, vendor payments were at risk, customer trust was at risk. Amazon's existence was at risk. Jeff met with CFO Joy Covey, one of the strongest leaders he had ever known. Her face was serious, her voice was steady, and her message was devastating. If we don't secure emergency funding, we're done. Jeff felt sick. This was the scenario he had feared from the beginning, the moment his dream nearly died. He spent the next weeks in a blur of meetings and desperate negotiations, flying across the country, pitching to investors who had already written Amazon off. Most said no, some laughed, some told him the company had no future. Others said the bubble had burst and the dream was over. But then, a sliver of hope. A few investors who still believed in the internet, or at least believed in Jeff's stubborn conviction, agreed to back Amazon. The funding was secured. Barely, just enough to buy time. Jeff didn't celebrate, he didn't smile, he was too numb, because he knew this wasn't victory. This was survival, temporary survival. The darkest moment wasn't the crisis itself. The darkest moment was realizing how close Amazon came to disappearing and how powerless he had felt. It shook him. It humbled him. It forced him to confront the terrifying reality of leadership. When you build something great, you will also carry the weight of almost losing it. The lawsuit that nearly broke him just as Amazon began regaining its footing, another blow struck. A massive lawsuit from Barnes and Noble. The retail giant claimed Amazon was lying by calling itself Earth's biggest bookstore. They said Amazon wasn't a real bookstore. They said Amazon didn't deserve the title. They said Amazon was misleading customers. Jeff's lawyers warned him the lawsuit could drag on for years. It could drain resources they didn't have. It could cripple the company. Jeff stared at the legal documents, feeling the old familiar fear pulse behind his ribs. How many battles could one company fight at once? How many storms could one leader endure? He looked in the mirror that night and saw a man who hadn't slept well in years. A man whose eyes had grown darker, whose shoulders carried invisible weight, whose heart was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. For a moment, a brief, dangerous moment, he wondered if walking away would be easier. But then he remembered the garage where Amazon began. The first orders, the customers who believed, the employees who sacrificed so much, the dream that brought him across the country, and he whispered to his reflection, "Not yet, not here. Not like this." The lawsuit continued, draining energy, draining money, draining time Jeff didn't have. But he fought. He fought with every resource, every strategy, every ounce of perseverance left in him. And eventually, miraculously, Amazon reached a settlement. They survived again. But survival had cost Jeff more than the world would ever see. The pressure nearly broke him, the endless stress began affecting his health. He lost weight. His voice grew strained. He aged faster than the calendar suggested. Employees noticed. Executives worried. His family felt the distance. There were days he looked at his computer screen and felt paralyzed, unable to think, unable to decide, unable to breathe under the weight of responsibility. Leadership can look powerful from the outside, but from the inside, it can feel like drowning with your eyes open. And Jeff Bezos was drowning, not in failure but in fear of failure, not in weakness but in the weight of expectations, not in mistakes but in the possibility that all his sacrifices would be for nothing. This was the darkest chapter. The chapter that almost ended the story, the chapter that defined the man he would become. Because darkness does not destroy leaders, darkness reveals them, and Jeff Bezos was about to decide who he really was. The breaking point had come, but so had the turning point. And his rise, the rise that would change the world, was about to begin. Rock bottom is not the end of a story. Rock bottom is the moment a person finally stops being who they were and becomes who they were meant to be. For Jeff Bezos, the darkness of Amazon's early years did not destroy him. It refined him. It stripped away everything unnecessary. It carved him into a leader built for endurance, clarity, and courage. And out of that pain came the rise. The turning point began quietly, not with applause, not with success, but with a mindset shift inside Jeff that changed everything. He realized something profound. Amazon would never survive by being ordinary. It would only survive by being relentlessly different. And so Jeff embraced a leadership style the world had never seen at that time. A style built on long-term thinking so radical, so unusual, so extreme that many believed it would destroy the company. But instead, it saved it. The customer obsession era Jeff stepped onto the floor of Amazon headquarters one morning and announced a philosophy that would define the rest of his life. We start with the customer and work backwards. Not competitors, not profits, not stock price, not industry norms, the customer. This wasn't a slogan, it was a doctrine. Jeff pushed it with the intensity of a belief system. He made it the center of Amazon's identity, culture, and decision-making. And this doctrine sparked the rise. Because when the company stopped chasing quarterly expectations and instead chased customer delight, something extraordinary happened. Customers returned, customers trusted, customers believed. Amazon's survival transformed into Amazon's momentum. Momentum is a fragile thing. It begins as a flicker, then a pulse, then a heartbeat. And Jeff could feel it. For the first time in years, Amazon was stabilizing. The operational revolution Jeff knew customer obsession wasn't enough. Amazon had to operate with precision, speed, and reliability far beyond what any retailer had ever done. So he led the company through an operational revolution. Warehouses were reorganized from top to bottom. New technology was built. New processes were created. New leadership emerged. Jeff made decisions that terrified everyone. He reinvested every dollar Amazon earned. He cut profits to zero. He pushed teams to think in terms of decades, not months. People said he was crazy. People said he would sink the company again. People said he didn't understand business fundamentals. But he wasn't trying to build a traditional business. He was trying to build infrastructure, a foundation strong enough to support whatever Amazon became next. And while critics doubted, something remarkable happened behind the scenes. Systems improved, shipping accelerated, inventory stabilized, customer satisfaction surged. Amazon wasn't just surviving anymore. Amazon was becoming dangerous. Dangerous to competitors, dangerous to doubters, dangerous to anyone who believed the internet was a passing trend. The rise had begun. The launch of third-party sellers then came one of Jeff's boldest decisions, a decision that would define Amazon's future and reshape global commerce forever. Most CEOs would have protected their turf. Most CEOs would have refused to let outside sellers compete on their platform. Most CEOs would have feared losing control. But Jeff wasn't most CEOs. He announced, "Let's invite other sellers onto our website even if they compete with us." Executives panicked. Some fought the idea. Some warned it would destroy Amazon's brand. Some argued it would cannibalize their own sales. But Jeff saw something far bigger. He wasn't building a store. He was building a marketplace, a living, breathing digital economy. And he believed one truth: if customers want more choice, give them more choice, even if it hurts us in the short term. And so Amazon opened its doors to third-party sellers. It was chaos at first. Systems broke, quality varied, rules had to be rewritten weekly. But then the magic happened. Selection exploded, prices dropped. The website became richer, more diverse, more powerful. Customers loved it, and Amazon's rise accelerated. The world begins to notice. Analysts who had once mocked Jeff now stared at Amazon's progress in disbelief. Competitors who once vowed to crush him were suddenly studying his strategies, trying and failing to keep up. Jeff didn't celebrate. He didn't brag. He didn't slow down, because the rise wasn't a victory lap. It was a beginning, a foundation, a base, a platform for something larger than anything the world had seen. Amazon was no longer a struggling startup. It was now a growing force. And Jeff Bezos, the man once dismissed as overly ambitious, irrational, impossible, was about to take his biggest leap yet. A leap that would transform Amazon from a rising company into a global powerhouse. A leap that would redefine technology, business, and human expectations. A leap that would change the world. Momentum is powerful, but momentum controlled by vision becomes unstoppable. As Amazon shifted from survival to growth, Jeff Bezos began seeing the world differently. Not as it was, but as it could be. He no longer viewed Amazon as a bookstore. He no longer viewed it as a retailer. He viewed it as infrastructure, a digital foundation capable of supporting industries that didn't even exist yet. And that vision fueled the next stage of Amazon's rise. The birth of Amazon Prime. Jeff recognized a truth that millions would eventually feel. People don't just want products. They want time, they want convenience, they want simplicity. So he proposed an idea so bold, so risky, so financially insane that many on his team begged him not to do it. Let's offer customers unlimited 2-day shipping for a yearly fee. The room went silent. Executives did the math, and the math was terrifying. Prime would cost Amazon a fortune. Prime would be abused. Prime would cannibalize profits. Prime could bankrupt them again. Some leaders argued it was suicidal. Others argued customers wouldn't pay for shipping. A few believed it wouldn't matter because Amazon might collapse under the cost. But Jeff saw something nobody else saw. Prime wasn't a shipping service. Prime was a loyalty engine. Prime was a psychological shift. Prime was trust packaged into a subscription, and trust is the foundation of empires, so he pushed forward. Prime launched. And at first, the numbers were terrible, the costs were brutal. The program looked like a mistake. But slowly, something extraordinary happened. Customers who joined Prime bought more. They explored more categories. They relied on Amazon for everyday life. They began to see Amazon not as a store, but as their default choice. Prime became a relationship, a commitment, a bond, and Amazon's rise accelerated again. What had once been a struggling online bookstore was evolving into a digital ecosystem, a place where millions of people lived their daily shopping lives. But Jeff wasn't satisfied, because he understood something deeper. The companies that change the world don't stop at one success. They keep creating the next one. The launch of Oz, a revolution nobody expected. As Amazon's marketplace expanded, engineers struggled with a problem. Their internal tech systems were chaotic. They needed storage. They needed computing power. They needed scalability. And everything they built was too slow, too fragmented, too inflexible. So Jeff asked a simple question, a question that would eventually reshape the global economy. If we need this much computing power, how many other businesses need the same thing? The answer was, almost all of them. And so Amazon took a risk unlike any taken before. They decided to rent out their internal computing infrastructure to the world. Executives hesitated. Some didn't understand the idea at all. Others worried nobody would trust Amazon with their data. A few thought it was a distraction. But Jeff pushed forward, not with force, but with clarity. He understood something crucial. The future of business will run on the cloud. Oz launched quietly, no fanfare, no global spotlight. It was small. It was experimental. It was doubted by almost everyone, but slowly developers came, startups came, enterprises came. They discovered AWS was fast, reliable, affordable, revolutionary. And within a few years, AWS became the backbone of the internet. Netflix used it. Airbnb used it. Thousands of billion-dollar companies grew because Oz made their growth possible. And suddenly, Amazon was no longer just a retailer. Amazon was no longer just an innovator. Amazon was the infrastructure of the digital age. This was the rise that turned a bookstore into a technological empire, the rise that turned Amazon into a company the entire world depended on. But before the world praised Jeff for AWS, before the success stories appeared, before the revenue soared, Jeff carried one fear. What if no one understands this? What if we build something world-changing and the world is too slow to see it? But he pushed forward anyway, because leaders don't wait for validation. They create the future before the world is ready. The culture of relentless innovation. Amazon's rise wasn't just driven by ideas, it was driven by culture. Jeff demanded a culture where speed mattered more than perfection. Experiments mattered more than tradition. Customer obsession crushed ego. Long-term thinking beat short-term profit. Failure wasn't punished, inaction was. He built mechanisms for innovation, 2 pizza teams, small, fast, powerful. Working backwards, documents, customer-first proposals. Metrics over opinions, data, not hierarchy. Day one mindset, never let the company act old. These principles were misunderstood at first. Some employees struggled. Some critics mocked the intensity, but those who embraced it became part of something extraordinary. They weren't building products. They weren't building features. They were building history. Amazon was no longer reacting to the future. Amazon was creating it. And Jeff Bezos, the man once ridiculed during the dot-com crash, was becoming one of the most influential leaders of his generation. But the rise wasn't complete yet, because Jeff was about to unleash something bold, something ambitious, something that would redefine Amazon forever and set the stage for the empire it would one day become. The rise of Amazon was no longer a question of if. It was now a question of how far Jeff Bezos was willing to go and what he was willing to risk next. Because in Jeff's mind, the rise wasn't about dominating retail. It wasn't about beating competitors. It wasn't about building a company. It was about building a future where customers could get anything they wanted, faster, cheaper, easier, without friction, without frustration, without limits. And that vision led Jeff to his next world-changing move. A move so bold, so controversial, so expensive, that even Amazon's senior team braced themselves for disaster. He was stating the future. He knew Amazon's strength would never come from its website alone. It would come from the invisible machinery behind it, the systems, the data, the logistics, the discipline. Fulfillment centers became Amazon's engine. And like any engine, the early days were rough. Robots malfunctioned. Employees quit from exhaustion. Shipments got lost. Costs exploded. Critics mocked the inefficiency. Investors begged Jeff to stop expanding so aggressively. But Jeff pressed forward because he saw what no one else saw. Speed is power. Reliability is power. Control is power. And once the system improved, once the warehouses synced, once algorithms optimized routes, once teams gained experience, Amazon became unstoppable. Delivery times fell. Customer satisfaction soared. Competition couldn't keep up. The rise accelerated. The Kindle, a risk that almost failed with Amazon's logistics strengthening, Jeff turned to another industry he believed was destined for disruption: publishing. Books were Amazon's origin, but Jeff had a radical idea. We must reinvent the book itself. Most CEOs would have been satisfied with selling physical books online, but Jeff wasn't most CEOs. He wanted a digital book, a device that could store thousands of titles, a device that would eliminate inventory shortages, a device that would put an entire library into the hands of every person on Earth. He wanted the Kindle. The idea was brilliant, but the execution was brutal. Engineers struggled for years. Manufacturers couldn't meet the vision. The device overheated. The battery died. The display malfunctioned. Millions of dollars were spent with no guarantee of success. Executives questioned it. Publishers resisted. Some employees privately whispered, "We're building a device no one asked for." Even the internal codename, Fiona, felt strange and uncertain. But Jeff pushed relentlessly. He would walk into labs unannounced, testing prototypes, challenging engineers, demanding innovation even when they felt they had nothing left to give. One engineer later said, "It felt like he was asking us to invent the future from scratch." And that's exactly what they did. When the Kindle finally launched, it sold out in hours. When Kindle books surpassed physical book sales, industries gasped. When publishers realized Amazon had reshaped reading forever, the world understood the truth. Jeff Bezos wasn't building a store. He was building digital transformation itself. The rise of international expansion success at home wasn't enough. Jeff believed Amazon needed to reach every corner of the planet, not someday, but now. Executives hesitated. The world was unpredictable. Foreign markets were complex. Regulations were difficult. Competition was fierce, but Jeff pressed forward. Amazon expanded into Europe, then Asia, then globally. Some regions flourished, some struggled. Some nearly failed. But the mission was clear. Amazon must be wherever the customer is. This idea, global presence, created a foundation that would later support Amazon's rise to becoming one of the most powerful companies on Earth. The turning point, profit arrives, and then something magical happened. After years of critics predicting collapse, after years of investors doubting Amazon's business model, after years of mockery, fear, and financial instability, Amazon reported quarterly profit. It wasn't much, it wasn't flashy. It wasn't a headline for the average person, but inside Amazon the moment was electric. Employees cried, investors gasped, analysts scrambled. The world took notice, because this profit wasn't a fluke. It was a signal that Amazon's rise was real, a signal that Jeff's long-term thinking wasn't madness, a signal that customer obsession was a winning strategy, a signal that Amazon had crossed the line between potential and power. Jeff didn't celebrate loudly, he rarely did, but deep inside he felt something he hadn't felt in years: relief, validation, momentum. Amazon had survived, Amazon had grown, Amazon had risen, but the rise wasn't over. Not even close, because Jeff Bezos wasn't aiming for success. He was aiming for greatness. And greatness was about to take him into realms no one saw coming, new industries, new technologies, new frontiers. The rise would become the foundation of an empire. But before the empire, there was one more leap. A leap that would redefine Amazon forever. A leap that would change the world. Great companies rise because of good decisions. But empires rise because of courageous decisions, those rare choices that seem insane in the moment and inevitable in hindsight. Jeff Bezos was now standing at the edge of such a decision. Amazon had survived. Amazon had grown. Amazon had begun to rise. But Jeff wasn't satisfied with improvement. He wasn't satisfied with stability. He wasn't even satisfied with domination. He wanted transformation for Amazon, for retail, for the world. And so he began preparing for his boldest stage yet. The leap into physical logistics. Jeff understood a truth long before the world saw it. Speed wins. Convenience wins. Reliability wins. And the only way to deliver all three. Control the entire chain, from warehouse to truck to doorstep. Amazon's growth had revealed a painful weakness. Jeff could not rely on UPS and FedEx forever. They were good partners, but their limits would become Amazon's limits. And Jeff Bezos refused to let another company define Amazon's future. So he pushed the idea that shocked analysts, confused investors, and terrified competitors. We must build our own delivery network. A private logistics empire, planes, trucks, vans, drivers, data, routing algorithms, all under Amazon's command. It sounded impossible. The scale was unimaginable. The cost was overwhelming. Executives warned him. It will take years. It will cost billions. It could destroy our finances. It's too risky. But Jeff didn't flinch. He'd already survived the impossible once. He could do it again. Amazon began acquiring thousands of trucks. Then a fleet of airplanes, Prime Air. Then independent delivery contractors. Then internal routing systems more advanced than anything in the retail world. Bit by bit, mile by mile, package by package, Amazon transformed from a retailer into a logistics titan. The world didn't understand what was happening. Not at first, but then delivery times dropped from days to hours. Prime became a life habit instead of a subscription. Customers trusted Amazon with essentials, not just convenience. Jeff had seen the future years before anyone else, and the rise continued. The echo moment, voice takes over even as Amazon expanded logistics. Jeff was already thinking ahead past warehouses, past shipping, past screens. He believed the next interface wouldn't be touchscreen at all. It would be voice. Inside Amazon's labs, engineers worked on a device so unusual, so futuristic, that most people didn't know what to make of it. A small black cylinder with a simple blue ring and a voice that could learn. Alexa. When the project was first proposed, the idea felt strange. A talking device, a home assistant, a digital butler. Some employees doubted customers would ever speak to a machine, but Jeff trusted something deeper. The easier you make a task, the more people will use it. That statement became the guiding principle of Echo. When Alexa and Echo launched, adoption was slow at first, but then it exploded. Millions bought Echo devices, homes became voice-powered, lights, thermostats, doors, speakers, everything connected. Amazon had quietly taken over the home. Alexa wasn't a gadget. Alexa was a gateway to the next era of consumer behavior, and Amazon was at the center of it. The rise of Amazon Studios, from books to screens. Jeff's rise did not stop with technology. It extended into storytelling. Amazon Studios was born from a simple idea. If we can deliver books, why can't we deliver stories on screen? The entertainment world laughed. They dismissed Amazon as an outsider, a retailer with no experience in film, a tech company pretending to be Hollywood. But Jeff believed in experimentation. He believed in creativity. He believed in letting customers choose the best ideas. Amazon Studios won awards, created original hits, proved that innovation didn't belong to one industry. And the world once again realized Amazon was no longer rising within one sector. It was rising across them all. The leadership flywheel behind every bold move was a mindset Jeff repeated endlessly. It's always day one. Day one meant never act like a big company, never slow down, never protect the status quo, always innovate, always push boundaries, always behave like the future depends on your next decision. This day one philosophy became Amazon's engine. It created a company where innovation wasn't an event, it was a constant, where risk wasn't feared, it was expected, Where failure wasn't shameful, it was data. Where success wasn't a finish line, it was a beginning. And the flywheel spun faster. Better customer experience, right arrow, more traffic, right arrow, more sellers, right arrow, more selection, better customer experience, and around it went, accelerating Amazon's rise like a self-fueling machine. The turning point, from rising giant to world power, by now Amazon was unstoppable, Prime was exploding, Oz was scaling globally, the Kindle was changing reading, Echo was reshaping homes. Logistics were becoming Amazon's superweapon. The marketplace was expanding. International presence was growing. Innovation was accelerating. The world no longer mocked Bezos. The world watched him. Competitors scrambled. Retail giants fell. Tech companies panicked. Investors marveled. Customers embraced the ecosystem. Jeff Bezos, a man who once feared losing everything, was now leading one of the most influential companies in human history. But the rise wasn't just about strategy. It wasn't just about technology. It wasn't just about innovation. It was about resilience, about surviving the years when everything went wrong, about enduring the pressure that would have crushed most leaders, about believing in a future no one else could see. The rise wasn't luck. It wasn't timing. It wasn't magic. It was the result of a man who refused to let darkness end his story. And now that Amazon had risen, Jeff Bezos was ready to build something far larger than a company. He was ready to build an empire. Success is not a moment. Success is an accumulation, a long, heavy chain forged link by link, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice. And when Amazon rose from the ashes of doubt, Jeff Bezos did not slow down. He did not relax. He did not celebrate. Because in Jeff's world, success wasn't the destination. Success was the responsibility. Amazon was no longer a fragile startup fighting for survival. It was now a rising force with momentum, resources, and global reach. But the greatest journeys in business begin after the world believes you've already succeeded. And Jeff was only getting started. Amazon becomes a marketplace of everything at first. Amazon sold books, then music, then electronics, then toys, then clothes. But Jeff envisioned something bigger, a marketplace so vast, so abundant, so frictionless that customers would instinctively turn to Amazon for anything and everything. Not out of habit, but out of trust. So he pursued an idea that would define the next era of Amazon: infinite selection. He wanted Amazon to feel limitless, boundless, a place where you could find anything you ever wanted and everything you never expected. But achieving infinite selection required something more daring than technological innovation. It required opening Amazon's doors to tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions of independent sellers around the world. This was chaos, this was risk, this was complexity, but it was also genius. Jeff understood something most companies still fail to grasp. When you empower others to win, your platform wins even more. Third-party sellers became the lifeblood of Amazon's growth. They brought variety, speed, competitive pricing, creativity, and customer value. And before long, more than half of all items sold on Amazon came from third-party sellers. Amazon was no longer a store. Amazon was an economy. The flywheel spins faster as selection grew, customers flocked to the platform. As customers arrived, more sellers joined. As sellers joined, the marketplace grew. As the marketplace grew, Amazon reinvested in speed, logistics, and technology. The flywheel spun faster and faster year after year, and Jeff kept repeating the message. We are still in day one. Day one meant innovation. Day one meant hunger. Day one meant refusing to act like a company that had already succeeded. And this mindset kept Amazon moving forward while competitors moved backward. The launch of Prime Video, challenging giants while Amazon was building an empire in retail and cloud computing, Jeff aimed his sights on a new frontier: entertainment. Hollywood didn't take Amazon seriously. Streaming services were still emerging. Traditional studios believed Amazon would fail within months. But Jeff understood a simple truth: attention is the new currency. If Amazon could earn people's attention, it could earn their loyalty. If it could earn their loyalty, it could earn their lifetime value. Prime Video launched quietly at first with a small catalog and modest expectations. But Amazon invested. Amazon produced. Amazon acquired rights to shows, movies, documentaries. And then it happened. Prime Video won major awards. Prime Video became a global streaming force. Amazon became a competitor Hollywood could no longer ignore. The success journey was accelerating. Jeff had taken Amazon into books, logistics, cloud computing, hardware, entertainment. And every time critics doubted him, and every time he proved them wrong. But he wasn't doing it for praise. He was doing it for progress. Global expansion, the world joins Amazon. Jeff believed Amazon should serve every human being on Earth, not metaphorically, literally. And so the company expanded into countries across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. In some places, Amazon thrived immediately. In others, it faced fierce competition. Some markets required massive reinvention. Some demanded cultural understanding and new localized strategies. But this global push revealed something powerful. Commerce is universal. Convenience is universal. Trust is universal. And Amazon, built on the pillars of speed, reliability, and customer obsession, grew into a global institution. Millions of businesses relied on Amazon. Millions of customers depended on Amazon. Millions of people began living their daily digital lives through Amazon's ecosystem. The success journey was no longer just business. It was impact. The transformation of Oz, from hidden gem to crown jewel AWS, once a tiny internal experiment, was becoming Amazon's greatest triumph. As companies moved to the cloud, AWS became the default choice. Netflix, Airbnb, NASA, Spotify, LinkedIn, government agencies, startups, corporations, everyone needed Oz. Revenue exploded. Scale multiplied. Amazon became the backbone of the internet. And something extraordinary happened. Oz became Amazon's most profitable division. A retail company became the leader of the global cloud empire. Jeff's vision had shifted Amazon from a store to the infrastructure behind the digital world. The success journey was entering a new level. A level no one believed was possible when Jeff started in a garage with 2 desks made from doors. But Jeff's ambition didn't stop on Earth. His vision was now pointed upward toward the stars. And that next chapter, a chapter beyond business, beyond technology, beyond fear, would redefine what legacy truly means. Success is a strange companion. When it arrives, it doesn't bring peace. It brings bigger challenges, louder expectations, and heavier responsibility. For Jeff Bezos, Amazon's rising success didn't make life easier. It made the mission larger, because now Amazon wasn't just a growing company. It was a global force shaping the way humans lived, bought, worked, consumed, and connected. And Jeff understood something crucial. If you stop innovating after success, success becomes your prison. So he kept moving, kept pushing, kept imagining what Amazon could become next. And the next chapter of the success journey came from breaking boundaries no other company dared to challenge. As Amazon expanded its marketplace, Jeff made a declaration that changed the course of retail history. We must be the everything store, not the best bookstore, not the best electronics retailer, not the best marketplace. The everything destination, a place where customers turned first, not to search, but to trust. Achieving this meant more categories, more sellers, more logistics, more risk. It meant scaling algorithms to handle millions of products. It meant building warehouses so large they felt like cities. It meant rewriting the rules of supply chain management. It meant treating complexity like a competitive advantage instead of a burden. Most CEOs would have slowed down. Most CEOs would have focused on profitability. Most CEOs would have protected the core business. Jeff did the opposite. He expanded the core. He reinvented profitability. He turned risk into fuel. Amazon grew into clothing, furniture, appliances, tools, beauty, groceries, and more. If customers could dream it, Amazon aimed to deliver it. And with every new category, the success journey accelerated. The world saw Amazon as retail. Jeff saw it as tech. Behind every shopping cart was code. Behind every recommendation was machine learning. Behind every search result was AI. Amazon wasn't selling products. Amazon was selling precision. Jeff demanded algorithms that predicted what customers wanted before customers even realized it. He pushed the company into machine learning, robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, advanced logistics, data-driven personalization. The world didn't immediately see these innovations. They were invisible, happening behind the screen, behind the warehouses, behind the infrastructure. But those invisible innovations made Amazon unstoppable. Every click became smarter. Every purchase became faster. Every customer became understood, and customers didn't just like this. They trusted this. Trust is rare, trust is priceless. Trust is the foundation of Amazon's success journey. For years, Amazon lived entirely online. But Jeff knew that groceries, one of the world's largest industries, were still untransformed. He saw inefficiency. He saw opportunity. He saw a future where even food could be delivered with the same reliability as books. And so Amazon launched Amazon Fresh. It struggled, it stumbled, it faced operational nightmares, but Jeff didn't abandon it. He doubled down. Then came the boldest move. Amazon acquired Whole Foods. The world gasped. Analysts were stunned. Critics were confused. Why would a tech company buy a grocery chain? But Jeff saw the deeper strategy. Physical stores, right arrow, closer to customers, data, right arrow, richer insight into buying habits, distribution, right arrow, faster delivery, brand, trust, instant credibility. In one move, Amazon became a dominant force in groceries. The success journey expanded offline into streets, cities, neighborhoods. Amazon was no longer a digital empire. It was becoming a real-world institution. Jeff had a belief. If you want the future, build the tools that create it. So Amazon invested in devices. Kindle revolutionized reading. Fire tablets democratized access to technology. Fire TV turned living rooms into streaming hubs. Echo and Alexa transformed homes into smart environments. Some devices flopped. Some succeeded beyond imagination. Jeff didn't celebrate the wins, and he didn't dwell on the failures, because hardware wasn't about gadgets. Hardware was about ecosystems. Ecosystems were about loyalty. Loyalty was about lifetime customer value. Every device, every product, every platform was another gear in the Amazon machine, another doorway into the Amazon world. And the machine was now running with extraordinary power. Amazon's culture wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. It wasn't soft, but it was effective. Jeff pushed teams to operate at high standards. He held people accountable. He demanded big thinking. He rewarded ideas over hierarchy. He expected leaders to dive deep, not delegate blindly. He insisted on speed, simplicity, and customer obsession. To outsiders, the culture looked intense. To insiders, it looked challenging. But to Jeff, it looked necessary. He wasn't building a company for the present. He was building a company for the future. And the future demanded discipline. By now, Amazon wasn't just succeeding. Amazon was dominating. Stock prices surged. Market share exploded. Customers relied on Prime for daily life. Oz became the world's most powerful cloud service. Amazon's marketplace became the largest digital economy on Earth. Jeff Bezos became a global icon, admired, studied, criticized, feared, respected. He wasn't simply a business leader anymore. He was a symbol of innovation, ambition, and relentless belief. But success didn't slow him down. Success didn't make him comfortable. Success didn't soften his vision. It sharpened it. And now Jeff was preparing for one more frontier, one that stretched beyond Earth, beyond business, beyond human limitations. The success journey was powerful, but what came next was destined to be legendary. Success changes the world, but true success changes the person behind it. As Amazon grew into a force that touched nearly every corner of modern life, Jeff Bezos himself was undergoing a transformation. He envisioned a world where startups didn't need millions to compete. A world where small companies had the same computing power as giants. A world where innovation was democratized, and AWS delivered exactly that. Billions of users relied on services built on Oz. Entire industries were transformed. Governments used AWS to run national systems. Startups were born on AWS, scaled on AWS, succeeded on Oz. Every AWS update strengthened Amazon's core mission, make the future easier to build. The success journey wasn't about revenue. It was about enabling progress. Prime started as a simple shipping subscription, but success transformed it into something far more powerful. Jeff realized Prime was not a product. It was a relationship, a membership, a trust pact, and so he kept expanding it. Prime Video, Prime Music, Prime Reading, Prime Wardrobe, same-day delivery, grocery delivery, exclusive deals, unlimited storage options. Prime became woven into everyday life. It offered convenience. It offered entertainment. It offered value. It offered simplicity. Prime members didn't shop on Amazon. They lived on Amazon. And this loyalty, this emotional connection became one of Amazon's greatest strengths. It turned customers into advocates. It turned habits into reliance. It turned Amazon into a necessity. The success journey wasn't accidental. It was engineered step by step, innovation by innovation, experience by experience. As Amazon grew, Jeff faced a new challenge. How do you build a workforce capable of matching your ambition? He didn't want average, he didn't want comfort, he didn't want good enough. He wanted excellence. So he created a culture where high standards were normal, ownership was expected, leaders spoke last, and listened first, data-led decisions mechanisms ensured scalable innovation, simplicity beat complexity. Amazon became a magnet for top talent. Engineers, scientists, strategists, analysts, creatives, logisticians, visionaries. But with excellence came intensity, and with intensity came criticism. Some said Amazon's culture was too demanding, others said Jeff pushed too hard. A few said the expectations were unrealistic. But Jeff believed in a principle he never wavered on. If you want to achieve big things, you must be willing to be misunderstood. And Amazon's success proved the principle true. Behind the scenes, Amazon's employees weren't just building a company. They were building the infrastructure of the modern world. Most CEOs prioritize quarters. Jeff prioritized decades. He told teams, focus on what won't change. And what won't change? Customers will always want. Lower prices, faster delivery, more selection, better convenience. So Amazon invested in those pillars relentlessly, even when it meant losing money short-term. Wall Street hated it. Analysts called him stubborn. Critics said he didn't understand profitability. But Jeff understood something far more important. Short-term thinking creates short-term companies. Long-term thinking creates legendary companies, and Amazon was becoming legendary. As success grew, perceptions changed. Amazon was no longer the scrappy startup. It was now the leader of multiple global industries. E-commerce, cloud computing, digital entertainment, smart home technology, logistics, AI, and automation, robotics. Jeff felt the shift. The world looked at Amazon differently. Competing companies feared its speed. Governments monitored its influence. Journalists analyzed its decisions. Customers depended on its convenience. The pressure intensified, but so did Jeff's conviction. He understood that success wasn't a finish line. Success was a platform. And from that platform, Jeff prepared to launch something bigger, a project he dreamed about since childhood. A project fueled not by profit, but by purpose. The next stage of Jeff's success journey would not take place on Earth alone. It would reach upward, toward the future of humanity. There comes a moment in every extraordinary life when success becomes bigger than achievement, bigger than business, bigger than wealth. A moment when a person begins to ask, what is my purpose now? What impact can I create beyond myself? What future do I want to help build? For Jeff Bezos, that moment arrived at the height of Amazon's success. He had created one of the most powerful companies on Earth. He had reshaped global retail. He had transformed cloud computing. He had influenced entertainment, logistics, AI, robotics, and digital behavior. And yet he felt a calling that transcended every accomplishment he'd made so far. A calling born in childhood, a calling built from curiosity, a calling shaped by imagination, a calling toward the stars. Long before Amazon, long before the internet revolution, long before the success and scrutiny, Jeff Bezos was a boy staring at the night sky, wondering why humanity wasn't exploring it faster. He once said, "Space has always been my destiny." So at the peak of Amazon's rise, while critics obsessed over retail and profits, Jeff quietly invested his own money into a small, unknown aerospace company, Blue Origin. The name came from Earth, the blue planet that gives humanity the chance to dream. Blue Origin wasn't a publicity stunt. It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't a distraction. It was Jeff's long-term purpose. Its mission was simple and enormous. Make space accessible to all humans, build reusable rockets, lower the cost of spaceflight, create a future where millions live and work in space. People mocked it, people laughed, people said it was impossible. People compared it to other billionaires' projects, but Jeff didn't care. He wasn't chasing headlines, he was chasing humanity's destiny. Blue Origin began building rockets slowly, quietly, methodically. Jeff paid for everything out of pocket. He invested billions, money he could have spent on luxuries, comfort, or celebration. But he wasn't buying things. He was buying time. He was buying possibility. He was buying the future. Critics called him unrealistic. They said rockets were too expensive, too dangerous, too complex. Jeff answered with one principle, gradatum ferociter. Step by step, ferociously, and step by step, Blue Origin rose. For years, Blue Origin stayed quiet. No big announcements. No media blasts, just engineers, hundreds of them, working on engines, boosters, capsules, and reusability systems. Then, finally, a breakthrough. The New Shepard rocket launched, reached the edge of space, and then returned, landing upright on the ground. A reusable rocket, a historic achievement. Jeff watched the landing video with tears in his eyes. Because this success wasn't like Amazon. This success wasn't about customers or revenue or stock prices. This success was about childhood dreams. It was about proving that humanity could reach further, that space wasn't just for governments, that exploration wasn't dead, it was beginning again. Blue Origin began testing more rockets, perfecting designs, improving reliability. Jeff spoke publicly for the first time about his true vision. We must protect Earth. The only way to do that is to move heavy industry into space. Earth should be zoned for residential and light industry only. The world listened, some inspired, some skeptical, some confused, but Jeff didn't need them to understand. He needed them to imagine. As Amazon and Blue Origin advanced, Jeff took on new forms of success through giving, through philanthropy, through environmental impact. He launched the Bezos Earth Fund, pledging billions to fight climate change. He donated to medical research, homelessness initiatives, education programs. People debated whether it was enough. People analyzed his motives. But Jeff wasn't paying attention to noise. His focus was on scale of impact, scale of solutions, scale of future generations. For him, success meant leave the world better, build tools for future builders, expand what humanity believes is possible. In 2021, Jeff Bezos made a decision that shocked the world. He stepped down as CEO of Amazon, not because he was tired, not because he was defeated, not because he wanted to retire. He stepped down because his greatest mission now extended beyond Amazon. He said, "I've never had more energy. This isn't about stepping back. This is about stepping forward." He wanted to devote more time to Blue Origin, to Earth preservation, to invention, to philanthropy, to long-term future building. This decision wasn't an ending, it was evolution. The man who built an empire was now ready to build a legacy. A legacy not just measured in revenue, but in the trajectory of humanity. Jeff's success journey had changed shape. Amazon no longer needed him for daily operations. It was now a self-sustaining engine of innovation and global scale. But humanity needed thinkers like him more than ever. He spent his time advancing AI, space technology, climate solutions, global logistics, and long-term infrastructure. He understood a truth most people overlook. Billionaires build businesses, visionaries build futures. Jeff Bezos had become the latter. The success journey wasn't ending. It was expanding from retail innovation to planetary responsibility to cosmic ambition. And through it all, Jeff never stopped believing in the power of ideas, the importance of invention, and the responsibility that comes with success. The boy who once stared at the stars was now a man preparing humanity to reach them. Success creates opportunity, but the greatest success creates something even more powerful, responsibility. As Jeff Bezos entered the later chapters of his success journey, the world watched him not just as a businessman, but as a symbol of ambition, innovation, and transformation. Every move he made, every frontier he entered, every risk he embraced, carried weight. Because Jeff wasn't simply expanding a company. He was expanding what humanity expected from the future. By this stage, Amazon was no longer a retailer, a tech company, a cloud service, or a logistics network. Amazon had become an ecosystem, a global, interconnected, constantly evolving superstructure that touched. The products we buy, the entertainment, we watch the technology, we use the businesses, we run the data. We store the devices in our homes, the foods, we eat the infrastructure of the internet, the habits of daily life. This wasn't accidental. Jeff designed Amazon like a living organism, a company with adaptability, resilience, intelligence, a company that could survive beyond him, a company that could grow with the world and also grow the world. The success journey of Amazon was not just measured in revenue or scale, but in transformation. Amazon changed how people think about convenience, trust, speed, expectations, customer service, digital experience, the meaning of store, the meaning of work, the meaning of future, Jeff once said. Your margin is my opportunity. It wasn't a threat. It was a philosophy. He believed inefficiency was an insult to progress. He believed every broken system was an invitation to innovate. He believed every industry could be improved with technology and imagination. Under his leadership, Amazon transformed markets that had barely changed in 50 years. And in doing so, he became one of the most influential figures of the modern economic era. One of the most defining elements of Jeff's success journey was his ability to be misunderstood for years, sometimes decades. Amazon wasn't profitable for its first long stretch. Critics mocked the business model. Analysts predicted failure every quarter. Journalists recycled the same headlines. Is Amazon doomed? When will Bezos face reality? Amazon will never make money. Jeff didn't listen because he understood a powerful truth. If people instantly understand your vision, it's probably not ambitious enough. He didn't want to build a company that fit the present. He wanted to build a company that created the future. Being misunderstood wasn't a burden. It was a sign he was on the right path. But success always carries a price hidden behind headlines and achievements. Jeff faced criticism. He faced pressure. He faced burnout. He faced scrutiny from governments, media, and society. He faced expectations that no human could ever satisfy perfectly. People dissected his decisions. They debated his wealth. They questioned his motives. Yet through all of it, Jeff held on to the core values that shaped his journey. Take bold bets. Fail fast, learn faster. Obsess over customers. Think long-term. Build mechanisms, not miracles. Stay in day one. These values weren't corporate slogans. They were survival strategies born from the battles that nearly destroyed Amazon. And they were reminders of a reality most people overlook. Success is not comfortable. Success is costly. Success is a burden carried by those who choose to dream bigger than the world allows. As Amazon reached unprecedented heights, Jeff's idea of success evolved. It was no longer about revenue scale, market share, technological dominance. It was about legacy, a legacy that would outlive him. He understood that Earth was fragile. He understood that innovation is necessary, not optional. He understood that the next century would demand solutions far beyond retail. Success, for Jeff Bezos, became use your resources to push humanity forward. And that belief guided everything, from Amazon's expanding footprint to AWS's global infrastructure to the investments in AI and robotics to Blue Origin's mission to expand civilization beyond Earth. Jeff began thinking not in years, not in decades, but in centuries. Systems that last, models that endure, ideas that lift humanity, foundations that give future generations new frontiers to explore. This was success beyond wealth. This was success beyond business. This was success in its purest form, enabling the future. By the end of this stage in Jeff Bezos's life, the world saw him as more than a founder, more than a CEO, more than an entrepreneur. He had become a builder, a disruptor, a visionary, a pioneer, a symbol of endless possibility. But this success journey, though massive, though historic, though world-changing, was not the end. It was the doorway leading into the next chapter. Because now that Jeff had built an empire, he was ready to build something even larger, his legacy. And the story of that legacy is what comes next. An empire is not built in a moment. It is built in the quiet hours, in the risky decisions, in the sacrifices no one sees. And by the time Jeff Bezos stepped into the later stages of his journey, Amazon was no longer merely a company. It had become something far larger, a global force, an economic artery, a technological backbone of modern civilization. This was the Amazon empire, not built with armies, not built with borders, but built with innovation, obsession, precision, and possibility. And today, this empire touches almost every aspect of human life. Amazon operates in dozens of countries. Its services reach almost every major population center on Earth. Its networks operate 24/7, always awake, always moving, always serving. More than 300 million customers use Amazon worldwide. Millions of businesses rely on Amazon to survive. Entire industries depend on its infrastructure. Jeff Bezos didn't just build a website. He built a living system, a worldwide organism of commerce, logistics, data, and technology. And the world runs through it. Every second, products ship packages, route servers, compute videos, stream businesses, scale Alexa devices, respond warehouses, coordinate payments, process every second. Amazon breathes. And Jeff's empire grows. Amazon now controls one of the largest logistics networks on Earth, rivaling national postal systems and global shipping giants. Its fleet includes 100,000-plus delivery vans, thousands of semi-trucks, dozens of Amazon air cargo planes, a global system of fulfillment centers, autonomous robots moving throughout warehouses, sophisticated routing algorithms one day, and same-day delivery infrastructure. What began as a garage operation became a logistical superpower. Jeff once said, "We're not competing with other retailers, we're competing against our customers' expectations." And customer expectations evolved. Same-day delivery groceries at the door, seamless returns, instant refunds, live tracking. Amazon met every expectation and then raised the bar higher. The empire didn't grow by chance. It grew because Jeff believed something radical. Convenience is a human right of the future. And Amazon became the company delivering that future. If Amazon's retail operations are the muscles, AWS is the beating heart. Oz today powers Netflix, Disney+, Airbnb, NASA missions, government, databases, startups in every country, millions of websites, financial institutions, global corporations. More than a third of the entire internet runs on Oz. It processes billions of transactions daily. It stores unimaginable amounts of data. It scales instantly, reliably, invisibly. To the world, AWS is quiet. To business, AWS is oxygen. This is the hidden pillar of Jeff Bezos' empire, a cloud service so powerful that entire industries cannot function without it. Jeff didn't just build a company with Oz. He built the digital infrastructure of the modern world. Amazon wasn't content controlling digital commerce. It entered the home quietly, subtly, permanently. Alexa is now present in tens of millions of households. It listens. It learns. It helps. It connects devices into a single intelligent ecosystem. Through Alexa, Amazon became the DJ, the weather reporter, the newsreader, the home security assistant, the shopping companion, the lights, locks, and thermostat controller. This wasn't about convenience alone. This was about a new relationship between humans and technology, one where voice became the interface and Amazon became the assistant. The empire expanded not through force, but through service. Amazon transformed streaming from a convenience to a necessity. Prime Video competes with giants such as Netflix and Disney. It produces original films and series. It acquires content from around the world. It invests billions annually in storytelling. Amazon Studios won Oscars, Golden Globes, Emmys, validation that Jeff's empire reached far beyond commerce. Entertainment became another pillar, another pathway into people's lives, another reason customers stayed loyal. And Jeff understood loyalty better than anyone, because loyalty was the fuel of his empire. Economists now use the term, the Amazon effect, because Jeff's empire didn't just grow, it reshaped. Retail logistics, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, streaming groceries, publishing, advertising. Amazon forced entire industries to evolve or collapse. Retailers adopted faster delivery. Publishers embraced digital books. Tech companies rushed into cloud computing. Media companies built streaming services. Jeff didn't follow trends, he created them. Amazon didn't adapt to the world adapted to Amazon. The empire was vast. The empire was powerful. The empire was resilient. But Amazon's empire was Jeff's final ambition. It was the foundation for something even bigger, a legacy that would outlive the company and maybe outlive humanity itself. And that story, the story of impact, wisdom, and transformation, comes in the next chapter. An empire is not defined by its size. It is defined by its influence, the way it shapes behavior, reshapes expectations, and transforms the destiny of industries. And Jeff Bezos' empire, the Amazon of today, is unlike anything the modern world has ever seen. It is vast, it is integrated, it is essential, but above all, it is still evolving, because Jeff didn't build a company for the present. He built one for the next 100 years. Today, Amazon is valued in the trillions. It is one of the most valuable companies in human history. Its market influence shapes global finance. Its decisions ripple through economies. Every announcement, a new technology, a new service, a new strategy moves markets. Every expansion shifts industries. Every innovation forces competitors to adapt. Amazon has become an economic engine powering job creation, technological advancements, small business growth, global retail infrastructure, digital transformation. Millions rely on the Amazon ecosystem for income. Authors, sellers, developers, manufacturers, delivery partners. Entire careers exist because Amazon exists. This is the scale of Jeff's empire. It is not just a company, it is a global economy wrapped inside a brand. Amazon Prime is one of the most successful membership programs in the world. Over 200 million people subscribe to it. But Prime is more than a subscription. It is a lifestyle, a rhythm, a daily companion. Prime members watch movies, stream music, order groceries, buy essentials, use Alexa, rely on fast delivery, explore exclusive deals, read ebooks, backup photos, play games, And because Prime keeps expanding, the membership becomes more valuable every year. This was Jeff's genius, make Prime so essential that customers feel incomplete without it. Prime doesn't just create loyalty. It creates emotional connection, a sense that Amazon is woven into daily life. And that connection is one of the greatest strengths of Jeff's empire. Amazon today employs more than 1 million people. It supports millions more through indirect roles. Inside fulfillment centers, inside offices, inside data centers, inside delivery routes, inside AWS operations, teams work constantly to keep the empire moving. But beyond employees, Amazon empowers entrepreneurs. Individuals earning through delivery programs, businesses scaling through Amazon Marketplace authors, publishing through Kindle Direct Publishing app developers, running on Oz Media creators, earning on Amazon Video Direct inventors, pitching through Amazon Launchpad. Jeff didn't just build a company. He built an opportunity platform, a system where millions can build their dreams through Amazon's infrastructure. That is the true nature of an empire. One leader's vision becomes 1 million people's pathway. Amazon has become one of the largest users of robotics in the world. In warehouses, thousands of robots move with machine precision, lifting, transporting, sorting, delivering. But contrary to fear, these robots aren't replacing people. They are augmenting them, making work safer, making processes faster, making operations more efficient. Jeff envisioned a hybrid future, humans and machines working together to build the most advanced logistics system ever created. Robotics allowed Amazon to scale. Automation allowed Amazon to accelerate. Today, the empire runs with a blend of human dedication and robotic accuracy. It is the future of work, and Amazon helped build it. Amazon is now one of the top companies in artificial intelligence, cloud computing, automation, voice technology, streaming, digital advertising, physical retail systems, space infrastructure. Through Oz partnerships, the Amazon empire is deeply technological. Every product, every process, every service is supported by layers of innovation. From machine learning models that predict customer needs to cloud systems that run governments to security frameworks protecting global data to AI models powering Alexa conversations, Amazon is everywhere. He expanded employee programs. He invested in education and workforce training because empire must evolve with responsibility. And Jeff wanted Amazon to be a force for progress. In 2021, Jeff stepped down as CEO, but not out of the empire. He became executive chairman, still guiding vision, still advising strategy, still creating long-term direction. Andy Jassy took over as CEO, a leader Jeff trusted deeply. This transition wasn't retreat, it was evolution. Jeff knew Amazon's foundation was strong. He knew the empire would grow without him at the helm. He knew his next mission, Blue Origin, climate solutions, innovation, required more of his focus. And with that decision, Amazon entered a new era. The empire of today is not defined by Jeff's presence, but by Jeff's principles. Customer obsession, long-term thinking, high standards, innovation, courage, relentlessness, day one. These principles still guide Amazon, they still shape its decisions, they still fuel its growth, because Jeff didn't leave behind a company. He left behind a mindset, a blueprint, an empire designed to last. The story of the Amazon empire is vast, powerful, and ongoing. But the next chapter, the chapter of legacy and life lessons, reveals the human truth behind this empire and the wisdom that Jeff Bezos leaves for future generations. An empire does not reach greatness by accident. It reaches greatness when vision meets discipline, when innovation meets persistence, when imagination meets execution. Jeff Bezos' empire, the Amazon of today, is more than a company. It is a global ecosystem, a digital infrastructure, a technological heartbeat powering modern life. But the true measure of an empire is how deeply it integrates into the world. Amazon is no longer something people use. It is something people depend on. And that dependency, that trust, is what defines the Amazon of today. Amazon has evolved into something unprecedented, a digital utility, invisible yet essential, quiet yet everywhere, complex yet seamless. Every time a person orders groceries, streams a movie, stores a file, uses Alexa, runs a business on AWS, reads a Kindle book, gets same-day delivery, or even tracks a package, they are interacting with the empire. Amazon is no longer a retailer. It is infrastructure. Infrastructure of Commerce, entertainment, logistics, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, advertising, digital payments, smart homes, this transformation is the culmination of decades of belief, risk, and reinvention. The empire is not built on products. It is built on systems capable of reshaping how humanity lives. Amazon has changed culture itself. Think about it. People no longer ask, where should I shop? They ask, should I check Amazon first? People no longer wonder, how do I store my files? They think, just upload it to the cloud. They no longer say, I need to watch TV. They ask, what's on Prime tonight? Commerce, entertainment, technology, convenience. Amazon is woven into the habits of everyday life. It taught the world to expect. Fast delivery, instant access, personalized recommendations, one-click simplicity, endless selection, these expectations reshaped industries worldwide. Once Amazon set the standard, every company was forced to evolve or crumble. This is cultural influence. This is empire, but with unprecedented scale comes unprecedented scrutiny. As Amazon grew, so did questions. Is Amazon too powerful? Does it treat workers fairly? Is innovation moving too fast? What is the environmental cost? Should one company influence so many industries? These questions created both pressure and responsibility. Jeff never ignored criticism. He confronted it. He adapted where needed. He defended where necessary. He learned where he could grow because leadership is not flawless. Leadership is accountable. Amazon launched sustainability initiatives, invested in electric vehicle fleets, expanded health and safety programs, increased wages for fulfillment workers, created opportunities for small businesses, pledged billions to protect the planet, committed to renewable energy at unprecedented scale. The empire continued to evolve, not just in power, but in responsibility. Even today, after becoming one of the most influential companies in human history, Jeff's philosophy still guides the empire. It's always day one. Day one means stay hungry, stay curious, move fast, challenge assumptions, avoid bureaucracy, think long-term, take bold risks, innovate fearlessly. Day two, Jeff warned, is stagnation, decline, irrelevance. So Amazon fights every day to remain in day one. Every new technology, every new service, every new idea is born from this mindset. Amazon Go stores, cashierless checkout, drone delivery, autonomous robots, healthcare services, home AI companions, global cloud expansion, AI-driven personalization, sustainability breakthroughs, advanced logistics infrastructure. The empire is not slowing. The empire is accelerating. Because Jeff built it not to last a decade, but to last generations. Though Jeff stepped down as CEO, he is far from gone. As executive chairman, he still shapes Amazon's long-term strategy. Visionary, projects major innovation decisions, cultural values, blue origin and space exploration, environmental initiatives, global problem-solving, philanthropic missions. He is not the daily operator. He is the architect, and architects don't retire. They expand. Jeff now focuses on impact beyond Amazon, advancing space travel, tackling climate change, scaling philanthropy, mentoring leaders, and visioning humanity's future, but his influence still flows through Amazon's DNA. The empire stands today because of the principles he instilled. The empire grows today because of the systems he designed. The empire evolves today because of the courage he modeled. Amazon today is one of the world's most valuable companies, one of its most influential employers, the global leader in cloud computing, a powerhouse in entertainment, a pioneer in robotics, a leader in AI, a force in groceries, a giant in advertising, a constant innovator. It impacts how people shop, how people work, how people learn, how people build businesses, how people entertain themselves, how people interact with technology. It is the empire Jeff Bezos built, not with shortcuts, not with luck, but with relentless commitment to the possible and the impossible. But the story isn't done, because an empire is only half a legacy. The other half, the lessons, the wisdom, the mindset, the philosophy, lives in the people who learn from it. And now, the next chapter reveals what Jeff leaves behind, not just to Amazon, but to the world. A legacy is not the story of what a person built. A legacy is the story of who they became while building it. And when the world looks at Jeff Bezos today, after the struggle, after the rise, after the empire, they often see only the results. The wealth, the impact, the global recognition, the technologies that reshaped human behavior, the companies that transformed everyday life. But Jeff's true legacy is something quieter, deeper, more human. It is the mindset that carried him through storms, It is the courage that moved him toward impossible goals. It is the philosophy that helped him build when others doubted and persist when others quit. This is the legacy of Jeff Bezos, not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the empire builder, but the man. Jeff's greatest lesson is simple yet extraordinary. Think in decades, not days. In a world obsessed with instant results, Jeff reminded us that greatness comes slowly, built brick by brick, choice by choice, sacrifice by sacrifice. He believed that most people underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 or 20 years because they overestimate what they must achieve today. Amazon wasn't built by chasing quarterly numbers. It was built by chasing vision. Each risk, each invention, each experiment was part of a timeline that stretched far into the future. Jeff once said, "If you're willing to think long-term, you can accomplish things that others never will." And that is the foundation of his legacy. Long-term thinking isn't a business strategy. It is a way of living, a way of being patient with progress, a way of staying calm in chaos, a way of seeing opportunity beyond the horizon. Jeff's legacy teaches us, don't chase quick wins, don't fear slow growth, don't let impatience destroy potential. Build for the future you want, not the present you see. This mindset shaped Amazon, but more importantly, it shaped the man behind it. Perhaps Jeff's most iconic principle is also his simplest. Start with the customer and work backwards. But this was not just a business rule, it was a worldview. Jeff believed the best way to build trust was to honor the people you serve. He believed companies fail when they forget who they're trying to help. He believed the customer, not the competitor, not the market, not Wall Street, should make the decisions. And this philosophy became one of the greatest engines of innovation in history. Amazon grew because it put the customer first, again and again, relentlessly. But this principle carries a deeper lesson: serve others, solve real problems, add real value, and success will follow. Jeff's legacy isn't just about business growth, it's about human focus. A reminder that leadership is not about ego, but service. Jeff Bezos never pretended to have all the answers. He never pretended to be the smartest person in the room. He never pretended that success meant certainty. He remained a student, curious, open, willing to learn, eager to explore. This humility, quiet, disciplined, relentless, allowed him to enter industries he didn't understand and innovate anyway. He asked questions others ignored. He challenged assumptions others protected. He embraced learning as a lifelong mission. Jeff believed, intelligence is a gift, but curiosity is a choice. And that choice shaped his destiny. His legacy teaches us, never stop learning, never assume you know enough. Never let success dim curiosity. Never let fear stop exploration. Because curiosity is what turns ordinary people into inventors, pioneers, and leaders. Perhaps the most misunderstood part of Jeff's journey is how often he failed. People compare the failures to the successes, but Jeff compared the failures to the lessons. Amazon had failed products, failed bets, failed experiments. Billions lost on ideas that didn't work. But Jeff approached failure with a kind of gratitude. He believed, if you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. To him, failure meant courage, failure meant discovery, failure meant progress, failure meant growth. His darkest moments didn't break him. They shaped him, they sharpened his instincts, they strengthened his resilience, they forced him to evolve. This is one of the deepest pieces of his legacy. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a prerequisite for success. Jeff teaches us to fail boldly, learn quickly, and rise stronger. And yet, beyond all philosophical lessons, beyond all business principles, beyond all strategies, Jeff Bezos' legacy carries something more profound, something human, emotional, and eternal. A lesson about purpose, a lesson about destiny, a lesson about using one lifetime to expand what is possible for everyone else. And that part of his legacy comes next. A legacy is not defined by the empire you build. It is defined by the impact you leave behind, the thoughts you spark, the courage you inspire, the future you help others imagine. Jeff Bezos' legacy stretches far beyond Amazon, beyond cloud computing, beyond logistics and technology. His true legacy lives in the mindset that powered his journey. A mindset that teaches us how to believe, how to build, how to endure, how to dream. And at the heart of that mindset are the life lessons that shaped Jeff's entire story. Day one, two simple words, but for Jeff Bezos, they meant everything. Day one means you move fast, you stay curious, you remain humble, you avoid bureaucracy, you act like a startup even when you're a giant. You challenge yourself every day. You never assume you've won. You never let comfort replace innovation. Day one is the antidote to stagnation. Jeff warned the world, day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by decline, followed by death. Those weren't business warnings. They were life warnings. Stay in day one in your career. Stay in day one in your relationships. Stay in day one in your personal growth. Stay in day one in your dreams. Because the moment you start acting like success is permanent, you begin to lose it. This philosophy is one of the most powerful parts of Jeff's legacy. Stay hungry, stay humble, stay building. Jeff Bezos was relentless about one thing. High standards, not perfection, not pressure, but excellence. He believed you cannot build greatness with average effort. You cannot create magic with mediocre teams. You cannot transform industries with low expectations. He demanded excellence from himself and from everyone who joined Amazon. This was not cruelty, it was commitment. Commitment to doing work that mattered. Commitment to building things that lasted. Commitment to refusing the easy path. Jeff once said, "High standards are contagious." And they are. They elevate teams, they elevate companies, they elevate individuals. His legacy teaches us, don't ask for the minimum, don't settle for good enough. Don't lower your standards to match comfort. Raise your standards to match your potential, because excellence is not a talent. Excellence is a choice. Jeff heard thousands of ideas over the years, from employees, investors, entrepreneurs, critics. But he knew the truth. Ideas are cheap. Execution is priceless. The world rewards the builder, not the dreamer. Amazon succeeded because Jeff acted while others hesitated. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He didn't wait for approval. He didn't wait for certainty. He believed, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask which seat. Meaning, when you see opportunity, step into it immediately. This part of Jeff's legacy inspires creators, innovators, and risk-takers around the world. If you want progress, take action. Try things, experiment, launch, improve, repeat. Action is the great differentiator. Fear follows every ambitious dream. Fear of failing, fear of judgment, fear of losing stability, fear of unknown outcomes. Jeff felt all of it. He lived through fear at every stage of Amazon's journey, but he always chose courage. He left a high-paying job for an uncertain startup. He faced ridicule during the dot-com crash. He pushed new inventions knowing they might fail. He made decisions that could destroy the company. He ventured into industries no one believed he could win. He pursued space exploration while critics mocked him. Why? Because Jeff understood, fear protects the present, courage builds the future. And that is one of the greatest life lessons he leaves behind. Do the thing that scares you, because that is the thing with the power to change your life. As Jeff grew older, his ambition grew deeper. Amazon was only part of his mission. The larger purpose was humanity. Through Blue Origin, the Earth Fund, philanthropy, sustainability efforts, innovation in logistics, AI, and infrastructure, Jeff began shaping a legacy that extended beyond profit. A legacy of possibility. A legacy of responsibility. A legacy pushing humanity toward a cleaner planet, a more connected world, a stronger technological foundation, an expanded presence in space, a future where opportunity is universal. Jeff's legacy teaches us. Success is not about what you accumulate. Success is about what you enable. Enable progress. Enable invention. Enable people. Enable the future. That is how you live beyond your lifetime. One of Jeff's most overlooked qualities is his resilience. He endured public humiliation, financial collapse, operational disasters, lawsuits, criticism, skepticism, pressure, sleepless nights, impossible expectations. Most would have quit. Most would have collapsed. Most would have retreated into safety. Jeff didn't. He rebuilt. He reinvented. He persisted. Because resilience isn't about being strong. Resilience is about refusing to give up. That is the legacy of his journey. You don't need to be fearless. You need to be relentless. These lessons, day one, high standards, action, courage, service, resilience, are not just business principles. They are life principles, human principles. Principles that can turn any dream, no matter how distant, into a reality the world cannot ignore. But the most profound part of Jeff's legacy is not in the lessons themselves. It is in how they shape the future. And that final perspective, the meaning of Bezos' legacy for generations, comes next. Legacy is not measured in wealth. It is not measured in titles. It is not measured in the size of accomplishments. Legacy is measured in impact, the invisible echoes of a life lived with purpose. And Jeff Bezos' legacy is an echo that will continue long after his lifetime, Long after the companies he built adapt to future eras. Long after the technologies he created evolve into things we cannot yet imagine. Because Jeff's true legacy is not Amazon. It is not Oz. It is not smartphones, streaming, logistics, or even space travel. Jeff's true legacy is the mindset he showed the world. That impossible things are possible if you are willing to think boldly, work relentlessly, and dream fearlessly. Jeff Bezos did not wait for the future. He built it, piece by piece, choice by choice, risk by risk. He did not accept the world as it was. He imagined the world as it could be. This is the essence of his legacy. If the world you want does not exist, start building it with your own two hands. He showed us that the future does not belong to the strongest, or the richest, or the most talented. The future belongs to those who persist longer than the struggle, believe deeper than the doubt, take action despite fear, think farther than the present, learn faster than their failures. This is why Jeff's story resonates globally. It is not a story about a man becoming wealthy. It is a story about a man daring to imagine more. Every era has a catalyst, a figure who pushes humanity into its next chapter. Steve Jobs did it with personal computing. Elon Musk did it with electric cars and rockets. And Jeff Bezos did it with digital infrastructure, commerce evolution, and long-term human expansion. Jeff leaves behind a world where buying anything takes seconds, running a business takes almost zero capital, AI is in millions of homes, cloud computing powers global industries, companies scale at speeds once impossible, space is no longer a distant dream, innovation is democratized, the impossible feels closer than ever. His legacy is a world upgraded. A world where technology serves humanity more efficiently, more personally, more intelligently. Jeff gave humanity capability, tools, systems, platforms that empower people everywhere to create, build, express, and grow. And that empowerment will echo for generations. Jeff Bezos is one of the few leaders who thought not in years, but in centuries. He understood something profound. Earth is the best planet, but it's not infinite. Climate change, population growth, resource limits. The future will challenge humanity in ways we cannot yet comprehend. And Jeff believed that one of the greatest gifts he could give future generations was time, time to solve problems, time to innovate, time to grow beyond the limits of a single world. Through Blue Origin, Jeff planted a seed for the grandchildren of our grandchildren, a seed of space exploration, space habitation, space industry. He wanted to build the infrastructure that allows millions of people to live and work in space. Not for ego, not for glory, but for preservation, to preserve Earth, to preserve opportunity, to preserve humanity's ability to dream without limits. This is the boldest part of his legacy, the part that may not be fully understood for 100 years. Jeff Bezos showed the world that the hard path is often the right path. He chose risk over safety, innovation over comfort, long-term vision over short-term gain, criticism over conformity, courage over fear. He chose the path that broke him, the path that challenged him, the path that exhausted him. But that path also made him extraordinary. Jeff's legacy teaches us comfort never created greatness. Struggle is the foundation of every significant story. He embraced hardship, he grew through it. He allowed adversity to shape him, not destroy him. And that resilience, that refusal to quit, is a life lesson stronger than any business achievement. At its core, Jeff Bezos' story is not about Amazon. It is not about cloud computing, or logistics, or movies, or space travel. It is about possibility. The possibility that one person with an idea and relentless belief can reshape the world. The possibility that dreams, even unrealistic ones, can become reality with enough persistence. The possibility that failure is not a wall but a doorway. The possibility that the future is always, always up for redesign. Jeff's legacy tells every dreamer, you are allowed to think big, you are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to fail, fall, and rise again.